Welcome to the Ride and Style Podcast, your turbocharged pit stop for automotive restyling. Buckle up with Jesse and Josh.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Ride and Style Podcast. I'm Jesse Stoddard, your host, along with Josh Poulson. We're excited to be here today. We've got a fantastic guest. Charles Bonfiglio with Tint World is here. Charles, how are you today?
Great to be here with you guys. I'm happy to be here.
Awesome, thanks.
What I love is whenever I don't know Charles super well. We've met a couple times in passing, but Charles, are you either from New York or Jersey?
What makes you think I'm from New York?
And listen, it's not just the he's not fresh off the boat. Okay, he grew up in either New York or New Jersey. But I love the passion that comes with the Jersey, New York guys.
Yeah, well, it's actually Brooklyn, New York is where I'm from. That's where I was born. Grew up in Long Island as a kid, and then back to Brooklyn as a teenager. And at 21 years old, I 2 suitcases, one-way ticket to Florida, and a plane ticket, and I started down here with my career.
Is there an underground passage from New York to Florida that I don't know about? Because everybody somehow just all of a sudden ends up in Florida from New York.
I don't know. I think it starts with a spring break calling you down here when you're a teenager, and then you get a taste of the palm trees and the beach. And when you're ready to get a little older and you want to make a move, why not move out of New York and move to Florida? I mean, it seems like it's an easy way to go.
It's a no-brainer. So are you in the Orlando area then, or where are you at?
I'm in the Fort Lauderdale area. I'm in Boca Raton now, but I moved down to Fort Lauderdale, then Pompano Beach, and as my wife and I decided to start having children, we felt Boca Raton was a good area, nice, clean, beautiful neighborhood.
Awesome. I was just there last week.
Yeah.
So Charles, let's go back a little bit. Tell us a little bit about how you first got into the automotive industry. If you could give us some history, we'd love it.
I guess, I'll start off with, as a teenager, I loved cars. My first car was a Chevelle, and I customed it out with, lights and mag wheels and stuff, and, really cool stuff. But I was really big into car audio. So I would have a car audio. Back then it was Crazy Eddies. You could buy whatever you want and you could plug it all in. And I got pretty popular from that. A lot of people were asking me to help them with it. I had a friend that had a older brother that had a car stereo shop called Dr. Car on McDonald Avenue in Brooklyn. And so I'd spend times on the weekends there, and I learned a lot, but didn't think it was going to be a business for me. It was something that I just liked. And I learned a lot of my business skills from my family. They had a clothing factory, and that's where I grew up. And then when I turned about 21 years old, I wanted to do something different. And I felt that, let me go down to Florida, where it's beautiful. I could drive, a convertible, palm trees, who wouldn't want to do that? So, but I wanted to go start a career and do something that I really loved. And I moved down to open up a car stereo shop. But after being down there a little bit, the banks didn't want to lend me money. The landlords didn't want to really lease to a car stereo shop. It wasn't like, and then I found franchising, and franchising was something that I had a cousin that had a Meineke discount muffler shop. He told me about it. And then I signed up for the franchise. Next thing you know, I opened up my first franchise. And that's how it started.
So you started with a Meineke shop?
Started with a Meineke discount muffler shop in Hallandale Beach, Florida, in the same landlord's strip center. I went back to him to try to sell him on the idea. Look, Meineke approved me. Maybe you should let me do the car stereo shop there. Well, we don't want no car stereo shop. That's kind of like not a real business, but it's Meineke. If you're a franchise, we love franchises. We'll give you an end cap. We'll help you build it out. I'm like, okay. So that's how it started.
So in your Meineke shop, did you have a little radio display where you would also upgrade their audio?
Well, so here's the story. When I was in New York, I actually did really well. I had a clothing factory because I learned the business from my dad. I wound up having a pizzeria in New York City, right around the corner from the Empire State Building. So I did rather well as a young guy in New York. I just wanted to do something I was passionate about. So I sold my businesses there, and I took a one-way plane ticket to Florida, just 2 suitcases. That's all I had. I had a Corvette, an 82 Corvette. I sold it, and I came down here, and to conserve money, I went out and bought a 4-year-old Ford EXP just to be able to, get around. After I got my first Meineke shop open about a year later, my wife was working with me in the office. She was going to college down here, and I said, listen, once I get the store open, we'll get married. wasn't too long after I opened the store. She's like, I want the ring. I'm like, oh, we're going to get married. So we got married. And after about a year into the business, I said, Jen, I said, I'm doing really good now. The stores are going good. I just bought a townhouse. Got the wedding. I want to go buy a brand new Corvette. She goes, Charles, I do the books and everything, and we're doing really well. But if you want something like that, you probably want to open up another one of these. I go, okay. So I picked up the phone. I called up Meineke. I got another license and opened up another store. And not even a year later, the second store was doing just as good as the first store. And I went back to my wife. I said, Jeanette, can I buy it now? She looked at me. She goes, yeah, go buy it. I go, all right. So I went out and I ordered a brand new Corvette.
What year was that?
1983. I bought it in 1984 because it was a year or two after I came down there. It was 1984 Corvette. And I actually completely customized a big box in the back. I have pictures of all this stuff. So it was all, I put neon in the box with lucite, box with 4 amplifiers and subwoofers. It was just amazing. And I used that and I started to go into car shows and stuff. So yeah, I was promoting my Meineke shop, but I was really into the car audio and I got known from it. It was really good.
What was it, red or yellow?
The first one was a black one with red interior.
Okay.
And it wasn't a convertible though. It was the glass top that came off. And so, my wife and I started driving around in that thing. We had two Meineke stores, and eventually we opened up a third, and I wound up building 10 of them. About halfway through, when I started to get to about number 4, I wanted to buy property and own the property rather than just lease it.
Yeah.
And then I started buying my property, and I became a general contractor. I built the buildings, and then would lease them to the Meineke stores. So I felt like, one day they'll get paid off, and I'll collect rent, and I'll have the business. So that's what I wound up doing up until about 2001 was my last store that I built, and each store was bigger than the next. When I opened up the last one, that was really a big one. It was an 18-bay shop. It was the first Meineke store that ever did over $2 million at the time. Wow. And so I did that consecutively, and we started having children. And at that point, I took a break from I was opening up stores every year or two, maybe 3 tops. And then I took a break for a few years from 2001 when that store opened. And about 2005, I told my wife, I think I want to start going back in again and open more stores. And I said, but I don't want to open up any more Meinekes. She said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to open up the business I always dreamed of. I said, I want to open up a custom car shop. And she says, well, okay, go ahead and do it. And we still had a bunch of Meinekes that were running, but I said, you got to keep an eye on these and for me so I can build these. And then in 2006, I went to the guy who originally started Tint World. Now, I didn't start Tint World. He started Tint World in 1982. And over the years, he actually built about 6 locations. And I used to bring my car there for tint. And I always thought, like the way I was with Meineke, it was a muffler shop. And I started expanding onto brakes and shocks and custom, exhaust work. And I said, but if that tint shop, if I can expand it on all these other cool stuff like car audio and accessories, I think it would be good. So rather than start from scratch, I want to buy that. But I don't just want to own one store. I think I could build a franchise and build it better. I saw what Meineke did, and I was very close with all the execs there. I was one of the top dealers. So I actually just bought the 6-store chain and converted it to a franchise. In 2007, we launched our first 2 franchises on top of the 6-store chain. Mm-hmm. We all sat around a table when I got approved and converted all the stores to a franchise. And that's how it really began franchising.
So you took those 6 stores and they became franchises.
Yes.
To like the shop managers or whoever.
Yeah. Well, the guy who originally started it, he owned the 6 stores. But when I met him in 2006, I made him an offer to buy the company. And so I did. And then after I bought the company, I let him still run those. So meaning like I bought the brand and I only had one of the stores, and the other ones I let him run because he felt like if you're going to make it a franchise, I'll actually do better. So once I got the franchise approved by all 50 states and all was compliant, we actually had a ceremony where we all sat around a table and signed all the franchise agreements. And I think it was the beginning of 2007. And plus the 2 new stores that we sold, the first 2 ones, we added onto it. And then from there, it just started, every year was a couple more, and that's how it started.
Did you end up selling the Meineke stores?
I did, but not until I sold them all off except for about 2. That was my 2 biggest ones, because they were giving me good income. And building a franchise, I don't make money right away. You got to focus on helping the franchisees make money, not about what you can make. So I really wanted to keep, you know, a cash flow coming in. So some of the properties the business I sold, some of the Meinekes I sold, I had rental coming in from the rents on them. And then I kept the two biggest stores that were cash cows, and I was making money from those. My wife was overseeing them. But by 2014, when I started to get like 20 to 30, you know, Tint World going franchises, and we started to make some money income, that's when I just needed to put all my energy into Tint World, and I sold my last two stores, but I owned the property and I signed leases with them. So I had cash flow coming from the leases, the properties were paid off, and I just focused on building the franchise from then forward.
I have a question for you, Charles.
Yeah.
When did the concept of franchise first come into your mind? And was there someone that introduced you to it or pitched you on it? Or did you pick up on it? Because franchising is not easy. This is a whole nother animal that you've been a part of, right? So
it really is. So again, when I started, I didn't like, when I talked to my cousin, and the way it happened, when I went down to Florida, I was down here, I couldn't seem to get anybody to take me seriously. The bank, I go to the bank, say, can I get a loan? And like, well, you know, what do you want to build? I said, I want to open up, you know, a custom car stereo shop. We don't have any loans for that. I'm like, well, how do you get started if you're not going to give me a loan? Well, we just don't have none. So that's what, and the landlord was saying no. So while I was down there for a few months, my mom called me up and said, you know, Charles, we're having a family wedding. Why don't you fly up for the weekend? You see your cousins. Okay. So I went up to Brooklyn and I was at the wedding, and my cousin Roland was there, and he had just several months earlier opened up a Meineke discount muffler shop in New Jersey. And so the way we met there, and he's telling me about Meineke, what's that? He goes, well, they do mufflers. I'm like, yeah, but a franchise, how does that work? He goes, well, you know, they give you a blueprint of how to build a business, a roadmap of how to build it, and they help you find your location, and they help you get a loan. I'm like, oh, really? And so he said to me, he goes, yeah, we're doing really well. It's been about a year. Him and his brother will open up a second store in New Jersey. And he goes, you know, after the wedding, before you go back to Florida, why don't you come take a look and see it? I said, okay. So I went over to my dad, who was at the wedding. I said, Dad, take a ride with me on Monday. I want to go see Roland's place before I go back. He said, okay. So my dad and I drove out to New Jersey. It was in Eatontown, New Jersey. And we pull up, and it was a, you know, muffler shop, a little smile. It was a 3-bay gas station with a muffler, smiling up on the building, saying Meineke, and gravel park, but nothing fancy. But it was busy. It had cars going in and out, and there was guys working the shop. And so I walked in, and I went start talking to the technicians, and how do you like this? And it kind of felt cool, and it was awesome. I like that. And then we went to the office, and I saw my two cousins behind the counter, like, you know, hey, a sign right here, cat back, you know, do this, you know, Joe, cat back on the caddy, you know. I'm like, they were just like having a good time with it. I'm like, I could get into this. And so after being there all morning and learning a little about what he was doing, we went out to lunch, and he, you know, told me a little more about it, gave me the business card to Meineke, and he says, give him a call, see if you like it. And so on the way down, I thanked him on the way home in the car with my dad. I said, Dad, it's not really what I want. I mean, I really want this other thing. He goes, Charles, I understand you want that, but sometimes in life, you got to take the path of least resistance. You could always do that later on. Right now, if this works for you and you can make money at it and get you started, they give you the financing and get you a lease, maybe do that. I said, I'll think about it, Dad. So, and my father was really cool. He's the best dad you could have, I mean, in my book. So we got home, and I thought about it. I went back to Florida. And while I'm there, I submitted all the documents to get approved, to learn about it. And about 2 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail from Meineke saying, you've been preliminary approved for Meineke discount muffler shops. Your next step is, I'm like, oh my God, it's the first yes I got since I've been down here. So I picked up the phone, I called my dad. He goes, yeah, go for it. So I signed up with Meineke. I got my first store approved. Before I did that, so first I got the letter, and I figured, I'm swaggy now. I got this letter approval. I'm going to go back to the bank and show them, you know, I got approved by a franchise. You guys should be able to loan me money. So I went back to the bank. I spoke to the same girl that told me no on loan. I said, listen, I know you told me no on the loan, but I got good credit. Look, even Meineke approved me for a franchise. She goes, wait, that's a franchise? Oh, yeah. Oh, well, you should have told me. She goes, we have a special loan package for that. An SBA loan. Well, here's the paperwork. And I'm like, yeah, but can't you lend me the money for the car stereo shop? She goes, no, for a franchise, we have a special loan program. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. So she gave me the loan papers, and I figured, okay, now I'm going to go back to the landlord, and I'm going to use the loan papers and the letter and show that the bank's lending to me. Meineke will lend to me. You got to let me build this car stereo shop. I was going to use Meineke and the loan for leverage to get the landlord to give me the lease. Listen, I'm from New York. What do you expect me to do?
You were going to make him an offer he couldn't refuse.
Yeah, So I go in and I tell the landlord just what I said. Listen, I got approved from the bank for a loan, and I got approved from Meineke, so I got good credit. Why don't you let me just take this end cap? You got Lee Miles transmission, you got Jiffy Lube in the building, you got precision tune there. I could be right in there. He goes, no, but if you want to put the Meineke, I'll give you the end cap. I'll do build out. I'll get you going. I'm like, he goes, you got to realize we buy these properties, we build the buildings for auto centers, and we get loans from the bank because they know we're going to put franchises in here. They're successful. But car stereo shop, they're not going to really like that much. I'm like, I'm starting to learn now. Yeah. So I said, okay. He goes, here's a copy of the lease. If you want, go see if Meineke will approve it. So I left and I went home. I called my dad. I said, Dad, I got the lease in my hand. I got the bank paper in my hand. I didn't even buy the franchise yet. I just had a letter of approval, and I'm getting yeses. He goes, Charles, path of least resistance. I go, all right, Dad. Called up Meineke, signed the deal, showed him location, got my first store open, and that's how it started, really.
Were there any there? So Meineke obviously wasn't in that area. Were there other franchisees?
There was a few Meinekes in the area, 2 or 3 others, and they didn't do really well. And I was wondering why, because my cousin in New Jersey, he was doing really big numbers. One of the top dealers up north, they were killing it. And so I didn't think nothing of it. I bought the store, opened up, and I started doing crappy too. The first couple of months, I'm like, I'm hiring staff, and I hired one guy. I remember he was working at Midas, the competitor to Meineke. So he comes in and he says, and in the interview, like, he seemed like he knew what he was doing. He was younger than me even. I said, but he was scrappy. So I said, listen, is Midas doing a lot of sales? Like, oh yeah, they're doing well. I said, because the Meinekes down here don't do as well. Up in New York, they do great, but not down here. I go, and I'm starting out now, but I'm beating them already, but I'm still not like my cousin in New York. He goes, Charles, you don't know yet. I go, no, what? He goes, they didn't tell you at Meineke? I says, tell me what? He goes, we don't have any snow, any salt, any potholes down here. So the exhaust lasts a lot longer down here. Up in New York, they're changing exhaust every other year. But down here, we get some snowbirds, but really, it's not that busy. I said, so what are they doing at Midas? How are they doing it? He goes, they're expanding their services. I said, really? What are they doing? He goes, well, they started doing brakes, and they started doing shocks, and doing, tune-ups and air conditioning service. Air conditioning service in the summer is great. So they covered all the seasonal stuff down here, and that's how they're killing it. I said, really? I said, you know how to do that stuff? He goes, yeah, I know how to do that. That's why I work there. I said, well, I need to hire an air conditioning guy. Give me the anatomy of an air. What do I need for parts? What I got to be certified in? What do I got to get? And then how do I market it? And when they call on the phone, what do I quote? And then when they come in, what do I upsell? And then he goes, okay, tune-ups. Okay, I got a friend that works in precision tune. Bring him in here. I hired him. How do I do this? He gave me the whole anatomy of what equipment, the whole thing. So I built a whole repertoire of these services that I was going to add on, and I was going to do what Midas did, and just start building. And the next thing you know, I became the top store in the chain. People saying, "Oh, this kid in Florida, he's killing it. Nobody else does like that." But it wasn't that I was doing anything special. I just found out that you can't just make it on mufflers, and in Florida. So I in the summertime in Florida, you say somebody you need air conditioning work, how much? They'll pay you $3,000 if it's hot.
Yeah.
But going to the winter, they're like, nah, just fill it up for Freon. So I learned that there's different services at different times of the year, and I just played on that. And so I became a top dealer from doing that. And I just learned from my staff, and I grew, and that's how it really happened. And fast forward, in the around early 90s, I started building more stores. I told you I had like the 3rd one open now. And then one of my operations managers, which I hardly ever saw, they'd come in and visit. And he came in and he goes, what's that in your office on the floor? I go, those are tires. And what do you got that tune-up board on the wall? I said, well, I do tune-ups, when you do a catalytic converter, you got to do tune-ups. And he said, well, those are all unauthorized services. I go, what do you mean? And he goes, well, you're not supposed to do that. Your franchise agreement says you can only do exhaust and shocks. I'm like, I didn't know that. He goes, well, I'm going to have to report you. I'm like, oh, shit. So, so he basically...
Wait, I mean, don't they get a cut of it?
Well, yeah, that's what I said. I'm like, I'm paying the royalties on it.
Yeah.
What I said, if I was to get rid of that services, I said
Your checks are going to go down.
2/3 of my sales would go away. That means he goes, yeah, but you got to be compliant. So, but at this time, I was really involved. I mean, like from the get-go, Meineke used to have like what's called a franchise advisory council, which I have now. And basically, they're franchisees in different regions that join to try to better the system and contribute. And so in the early 90s, there was no point of sale or software or anything. There was just writing the stuff on the pads, and they had carbon paper, and then you take the carbon copy out at the end of the week. You'd add them up on a form. You'd put a check in there, add it up. Here's your royalties fees. Here's your advertising. You'd other check. Put them in an envelope. Put like 10 stamps on it, and you'd ship it off to Meineke, in the mail. And so that's the way things worked. So Meineke, at one of the conventions in the early 90s, I think it was about 92 or 91. We're at a convention, and I think we're in the Bahamas, and all the franchisees, were there, and Meineke's up on this big dais, and they go, "We want to announce something," and we're looking at what? They go, "We have this new Radio Shack computer, and it's a dot matrix printer, and we're getting a lot of customer complaints that people can't read their sloppy handwriting from the stores. So we would like to be able to maybe try to, use this computer to be able to, print the invoices neatly. And we're looking for like a chairman of our computer committee that we can collaborate with and see what we can do to improve this." So they said, who wants to be on this committee? And all the people, "No, we don't want no computers." And I'm like, "I'll do it." And they go, "Bonfiglio, come on up here." I'm like, "All right." I run up to the dais, and they go, "Listen, you're going to be our computer committee chairman. We're going to give you a free computer for all your stores, and we want you to use use it and tell us what we can do to make it better." I'm like, "Great." So that's how I really started getting to know more about franchising. So I took it home, and I remember I created the first invention. So I'm really nitpicky neat. So I had on the wall the time clock. Everybody comes and punches the time clock. And I always hated those ugly time clocks on the wall. I thought it was messy. So Meineke, when I had these computers, I had a weekly call set up with this software company. So when they would say, "What do you want?" I'm like, the first thing I really want, is there any way we can get that time clock off the wall? And maybe just push the guys, maybe initials in there and prints out a report. He goes, "Yeah." So they coded the time clock, and that was my first invention in the point of sale. And it started going from there. But none of the other stores really wanted this thing. And I just loved it. I just embraced it. So some of the things that I started to create is product lines and classes. And like, Meineke, what do you need that? So of course I'm on this committee. There's a marketing committee, an advertising committee. There's a product committee for all the vendors. And there's now the computer committee. And it started to be, all the stuff started funneling through the computer committee. So I got to learn everything, because once it started printing the customers' names and stuff, we were able to put the names in the computer and then print labels to put them on postcards before internet. And so we print them, go to the UPS and send them out, or USPS. And so that was one of the things we did. And then as technology evolved, I started to say, why do we have to send these reports up? Can't we just electronically send them through the fax, and that's, so I worked with the team. I created that. And Meineke used to, all the people on these committees, they would fly them up to North Carolina at the corporate office once a quarter. And we'd sit around this big boardroom table. We'd collaborate with all the C-level execs, and we'd tell them all the things, and we'd learn. But as the time was growing, like more and more, I was working with the marketing department because they wanted the data. And then I started working with the product committee, because I'm like, we have all these catalogs. I got to look up in this catalog for clamps, what's going to fit this car. This one for hanger brackets, this one for mufflers, this one for tailpipe. I'm like, can't we just put in the computer where I put year, make, and model? And there was nothing like that. So they said, that's really good, but you probably got to go to the manufacturers. So I started calling up the manufacturer, called the product committee. Who do I call to get this? Started dealing with the IT people, and they started giving me catalog data. Started sending that over to and we just went on and on. I mean, I would spend my Sundays taking my wife to the mall, and I go to like Macy's, because there was really nobody that had computers at this time. So I'd say, just go shop around. I talked to the girl behind the counter. "Hey, is it right if I just come around the counter? I want to see what you got on that green screen back there. What was that? Well, what does that do? What do you use this for? Does it tell you?" So I started learning, like, okay, write that down. I got that. And I'd go back. I said, okay, I got some ideas. Any way I can do it. Then I started getting friendly with the CFO of Meineke. His name was Mark Street, coolest guy, and guy's a British guy. And I just really like spending time with him. He used to tell me all these war stories, cool. But the point is that we flew together to where the software guy was that made it. And we got stuck at the airport one day where both our planes got, delayed. We sat in the airport for hours and he taught me things about finances that I never even knew. I'm a kid from Brooklyn. What do I know, right? So we sit there and he's telling me, okay, so what do you want to know? I said, well, I want to know I want to know how many new customers come in versus how many times they come back a year. And then I want to know what's the average ticket. And I want to know where are these customers coming from what neighborhood or what zip code. And, I want to know, am I selling a good mix of services and what's my inventory? So I started creating inventory reports and all these things. Then I want to know like what one of my mechanics are doing most of the work and which ones are just sitting in the corner. Nobody knew. So I would basically program that I would have commission reports or spiff reports or just to know who's doing what. And so I created all these really cool things over the years. And then Meineke said, we just can't get everybody to want to sign it up. So that at the annual conventions, I'd be behind a desk, a table at the convention, and I'd have the computers. I'd come here, guys. And then they put me in a room to do training on the computer. Nobody really wanted to do it, but they'd amuse me by coming and listen to the guy in the computer room. And I'd say, listen, guys, I got something for you. And they go, what? I'm like, I got the video on the screen. I mean, the PowerPoint, but I want to ask you something. You guys are all smart guys. You guys, what's your store do? 900,000. What's your store? Where are you? Oh, in Connecticut. What's your store do? Okay. Let me ask you, how many techs you have? Okay. What do you pay your techs? 900, 800, 1,200. Great. Out of the 3 techs you got, which one does the most amount of work? I don't know. They all work together. I'm like, no, I don't think so. I said, I want to know, does anybody know what their techs do a week? No, we just hired them and they work. I'm like, well, let me show you how I found out. And I put the screen up. I'm like, do you know I had 3 techs and look at what they're doing in weekly and monthly work on the screen. See that report? Oh, yeah. I says, I found out that I had 3 techs. I'm paying $1,000 a week each. And 2 techs are doing 90% of the work. The other one sitting in the corner. And you know which one that is? That's the master tech. The big wheels, the big toolbox, every tool you want, he's sitting in the corner. Yeah, do this and do that. The other guys I go to make case. If you if I was able to give you a couple of $1,000 more a week, would you be able to do it? He goes, yeah, do all you want. I go to the guy in the corner and I go, you know what? I got wheels on that toolbox. He goes, why? So he go, roll that shit the hell out of here. I said, you're done.
Gone.
So I saved $1,000 a week. I gave a little extra to the other guys, and I was kicking ass. And like when I said that in this room, these guys were like, where do I sign up?
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I said, oh, yeah, I'll help you guys. So I was the guy that would call me. I'd log into the computer. I'd configure it. I train them. And at the time, we had like 600 or 800 stores, and I just loved doing it and helping them. And so that happened to the early 90s. And I tell you, I think I got a lot of the knowledge that I have today because of that. And, flying back up, spending time with the high level execs, I learned a lot from them. And then in about 1997, by the way, let me go back to when that happened in the late 80s, early 90s, about when the guy came down and said, you can't, there's all unauthorized services. Because I was on the computer committee, I had some favorable people for me that I didn't get in trouble. They were arguing back there for a month. Should we terminate him? Should we do this? No, he's a good guy. He's helping us out. All right, what should we do? So they gave me what's called a special addendum. Addendum to my franchise agreement says that I'm allowed to do these other services as long as I report them and pay royalties on them. And I have to put a sign on the wall that said, if you want these services done, they're only warranted at this location, and also put it on the invoice.
Which is fine.
No problem. I didn't have a problem at all. And I had to be certified in the areas that they didn't even know what it was, but I was. So with that, I was allowed to do things that nobody else was. And my stores became the highest reporting stores in the whole entire country. And as the 90s came around, and you guys probably know this, around 1997, the EPA came out with new laws saying that we're going to extend the warranty on the catalytic converters from 30,000 mile warranties to 100,000 mile warranty from the factory. And we're going to change the exhaust from galvanized to stainless and aluminized, which is going to last 3 times longer. Now, Meineke was freaking out because that's their business model.
Yeah.
So in the middle of 1997, I got a call from the CEO of Meineke's secretary, or administrative assistant, whatever. She calls me up. She goes, "Hi, Mr. Bonfiglio. Ken Walker wanted me to call you up," that's the CEO, "and he wanted to see if he could bring his team down there to talk with you." I'm like, "What did I do wrong now?"
Yeah, you're like, oh, great. I'm on another list. I got reported again.
So she goes, no, this is a good thing. This is really good. I said, well, who's coming? Well, he's got like the CEO, the CIO, the CFO, and also
all the C's and the O's.
VP of operations, VP of technology. I'm like, oh, shoot. So I said, well, what do they want? No, this is a good thing. I'll give you the itinerary later. I just want to know if you're available when. I said, okay. And I was like a little nervous, but she was making me feel fine. So after they booked in, she called me back and she said, well, listen, what they want to know is they want you to have prepared for them like a little bit of information about the anatomy of each service and like what kind of equipment you need, what kind of certifications, how does this work, and I said, okay, I could do that. I like that. So when they came down, I just had built a new store at the time. And I think I built my 10-bay store. That was the first store that ever did $1 million in the first year of their brand. And they all came down to see it. And when they came in, they were like taking pictures of everything. They were going to my stock rooms. They were going to the equipment. They were talking to my techs. They were just like, I was like, oh my God, I'm rated. And there was like probably 30 of them. And so after being all morning there, learning and seeing, they took me out to a hotel in Pompano Beach, and they rented this big room with a big dais. So we all walk in, and I go sit down, so I'm like, okay, what am I going to learn now? They're like, no, Mr. Bonfiglio, you have to get up to the front. I'm like, me? Like, yeah, we want you to get up and onto this podium, and we want you to talk to us about things. I'm like, I get up in front of 1,000 people, no problem right now. But at that time, I was like, not that guy. I was just still young, just trying to figure it out. I said, okay. And by the way, bring the anatomy of the stuff that you wrote up for us. I said, okay. So I brought it up there. I'm standing there with all these high-level executives, and they want me to get up there and tell them a couple of things. They asked me a question. Okay, well, we have a lot of franchisees, and that when we tell them like Pep Boys is open up across the street, they're like, oh, that's it. I'm going to close. I'm going to die. They're going to take all my business. But when we call you and we tell you things like that, you're like, screw them. I'll crush them. Where do you get that mindset from? I go, well, I know my competition. I says, Pep Boys hires all these 17-year-old kids. They're not trained. They screw everything up. Customers bring it over to me. I fix it. I make customers for life. Like, well, how do you keep your employees so long? Everybody else is turning. Well, I train them on all different services. I cross-train them so they're always be able to be busy any time of the year. And the company's always growing. And I'm always opening up a new store every couple of years. So they all have room to grow. I said, and I celebrate with them. Like when we break a record, I take them out to Roots Chris Steakhouse. They're not used to that. I said, I'll have a barbecue with them. Christmas, they all get presents. I buy die-cast cars with our brand on them. I give them out to everybody. They don't get that everywhere. I said, so they're like friends, So they're writing all these notes down. Then they go, well, talk to us about the, auto services. How hard is it? And, what does it take? And so I started to go to the anatomy of a tune-up, the anatomy of air conditioning, all these different things. How about oil changes? Well, yeah. Let's realize that oil change is the only one service that you're going to get customers to come back every 90 days, and you get to see them and say hello, have a cup of coffee. And while the car's in there, I get to look at their car. And I tell them, by the way, while it's in there, you want to check it, make sure everything's okay? Yeah. I go check it. I give them an inspection. Sometimes it's fine. Sometimes I say, hey, listen, this needs to be done. And that's where I'm getting all my work. I says, if I'm just doing a brake job or just a muffler job, they ever going to come back to me? No, I'm a transactional guy now. They don't get the relationship with me. I tell them, stop in every quarter. You have a free bagels over here. You have, I'm just treating them like family. And I learned this from my dad. My dad ran a business with women that were all from the local neighborhood. And, he gives turkeys for, Thanksgiving. You do these things. And so I'm a simple guy. I just followed along. And I treated
this before the $9.99 oil changes that popped
up.
Everywhere.
We started with $19.99 oil changes.
$19.99, yeah.
In about after me, I was.
Yeah, I was going to say you were doing it first,
right? So when they start the moaning and groaning that our franchisees had, they were going to. So again, I learned how to deal with franchisees, and I studied them. I'm like, why are the top 20% making so much money and doing well? Why are the bottom ones always going out and having a tough time, and everybody else is in the middle? Why can't the middle get to the top? And I would literally take my wife on vacation. I'd say, you know what? I saw a new store that was opening up in Virginia. Let's go on vacation to Virginia. And you go to the mall for the day. I'll go hang, spend with these guys. A nice new shop they opened. I go in there. I train them. I'd help them. I coach them. I'd say, what's the most you ever did in this store so far? Oh, well, we did a really big day, but we're never going to do that. I said, if I do this, we're going to buy all these guys lunch today. I go to guys, you with me? And I team build. I get the whole thing going. So I do all these really cool things. But you know what? No matter how well I was or how good I got, I learned something from everybody. I don't care if it's the lowest bottom loser store. I learned one thing from that store and go back, that's a good idea. Just because somebody's not good at everything doesn't mean they're good at nothing.
Yeah.
So I learned a lot and I trained a lot. And the more you train and coach, the more you actually reinforce what you do know and learn from other people what they know. And I did a lot of that. So I shared that with the people at Meineke at this table. And they're like, okay, well, we're going to have a problem with a lot of franchisees wanting to do these things because now we're losing these services and we want to go back and write addendums to what services are going to be good because we had three bay stores in Brooklyn. They can't expand. There's nowhere to go. So when they lose them, we don't want to shove everything in there because we'll lose our main core of business. So what can we add in? So we dialed in like, okay, if they're losing some business and they got a small store, we can add this 1 or 2 services. If they have a bigger store and, maybe they have 5 bays or 4 bays. So we started doing that. So that was in 1997. By 1998, Meineke was sending me the legal documents for the addendums to review to make sure they were accurate with equipment and training and whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I just love doing this stuff. So they went back and they started rolling out these service addendums, and it really helped save their company. By the time we got to 2000, Meineke changed the name to Meineke Car Care Center. All the signs were changed, and we became a full car care center. And that's how I helped Meineke evolve to what they are. And I just really loved the ride. I learned it. So when I bought Tint World, naturally I said, how do I expand these services? And I said, okay. So I basically did the same thing with aftermarket.
So one question on percentage, then I'll let Jesse ask a question. How much do you've been on both sides. You've been a franchisee, you've been a franchisor, and you've been a lot in the middle. So how much percentage wise would you say success of the franchise depends on the owner of the franchise versus the mothership? I mean, is it a true 50-50, or is it more onus on the owner to embrace? What would you say? I know every franchise could be different, but for Tint World, let's say.
Well, I'll start by saying that not all franchises are equal. I mean, so number one, you can open up a cookie franchise and it can knock it out of the park because there's a good cookie, a good name, and it's a trend. And in 4 years, the thing is like just not there.
Yeah.
So, and then also you can have a franchise that opens up and they seem to get it going, but they don't really invest into the business and the growth and everything. So it's not all there. What I loved is how do we make it better every day? How do I make it better? So number one, if you have a good franchise company that's always innovating and growing, especially if you have a good sector, automotive, we're not going anywhere. It was great. So I know it's good and you're always going to work on it. And how do you outdo? And so that's a big part of it. So if you have a good franchisor, all you're doing is getting more and more quality tools in your toolbox. It's like saying, what's more important, having a really good technician that knows a lot and certified, or having someone that's scrappy and pretty good, but one guy has a toolbox with everything in it, and the other guy's working with a wrench. Like, that's what franchising is. I'm giving them a toolbox with everything in it, all the tools. Now, are there people with a good toolbox, but they're not a good operator? They don't know how to really use the tools. They don't train. They're sloppy. Yes. So it's a balance of both. Number one, and I really tell franchisees, and I just really recently we were talking to our new CMO, and she says, you know what? When you go and buy a franchise, you got to be a business owner first and a franchisee second. Because if you go in and saying, I'm going to be a franchisee and they're going to do everything for me, that's not going to make you a great franchisee. You got to go. You're buying a franchise to streamline the business. I've already got the software, the talent, the tools, the marketing, the systems. I have other franchisees that we share the same voice, and we can grow this thing. And so you can leverage that brand to grow. Going it alone is really difficult. I mean, just building a website today could cost you over $100,000 just to get started. And then you're talking about, all the, you can't get the buying power, the negotiating, the different things. And by being part of a brand, you can grow. I truly believe in franchising, and I am not saying there's not a place for an independent business. That's how things incubate and grow, but not everybody's going to be doing that. I mean, do you want to try to figure out how to build a business and reinvent it, or do you want to go buy a business model that's proven and leverage it to open up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stores, and then buy property and then put them in the property? And that's me. That's what I love to do. I want to leverage a system for growth, and I want to gauge myself for, can I be at the top of that system, in the top 10, top 20, top 10%? I want to be there, and that's really what I focused on, and I always want to get better. To me, that's a lot more fun, and you can focus on your business. And if you really are someone who's an entrepreneur that wants to create stuff, you join the committee and you work with them. Everything doesn't always have to be about money and building it for me. I can make my money by enjoying, and you can automate your business a lot better rather than always think about, what do I do? What do I got to create a brochure. I got to create a new this or a new that. And what's the best equipment? Oh, I got to negotiate something. If you got a system that's a really good quality system, a lot of these things are done, and you really can leverage that and grow a lot quicker.
I love it. Good answer. I would like to ask a question about one more about you, though. What would you tell your younger self? If you knew what you knew now, what would you tell your younger self?
That's, a lot of people ask me that, and I'm a guy that pretty much does as much as I can do every day. So there's not a lot of different things. I could tell you one thing. It may not be anything festive, but one of the things, I didn't want to open up a car stereo shop in New York for 2 reasons. I wanted to move to Sunshine, and 2, I felt, you know what, and this is no joke, at that point in New York, you open up a business, you're going to have Tony Montana coming in your door, knocking and saying, pay me a Vic on protection. And I figured, I'm not doing that. I'm going to go to Florida. I'm going to have an area where I don't have that crap. And I came down here and I signed the franchise agreement, and I'm paying that VIG every single week.
Yeah. He just was in a different, he was in a
I just don't get my knees broken or something. But what would I tell myself? I'm just very lucky and fortunate. I don't really have a lot of things that I can say that I might have done better or different. I really tried hard. I really worked hard. But I would say, if the one thing you would do is stay focused on what you're doing, because a lot of people today, they go and they start doing something good, they get good at it, and then they see somebody else, oh, I'm going to go do that, and distracts them from what the long game. If you're going to do something like I did, if you're going to do something different, or you want to grow more, I didn't go outside of my business. I just would buy the property. That was another investment. It supported my business growth. And not only that, you'd go to the bank, and they love to lend you money for a business as a franchise. Now the property, even better, longer term loan, lower rates, secured on the business. So, I just would probably want to go faster. I didn't make a lot of mistakes, I don't really think. And any mistake, it was only because it was a learning curve. We all make mistakes. But I've really been blessed to be able to follow a good road and just stay with positive people. And that's another thing, negative people will drag you down, positive people will grow you. And so you want to be around collaborative people, and just build a team, build a team, and the team will help you build your business.
And go ahead, Jesse. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Josh.
Well, how many locations do you guys have now?
We just have I think 149 open right now, and about 100 in development.
140. Okay. So, where do you see, what do you tell people, like, the future of this industry, and maybe your franchisees, that especially ones coming in maybe out of the automotive, what do you tell them? They're like, oh, cars are getting so hard to work on, and this, that. I mean, we're not putting in radios as much anymore, Charles. So I'm glad you got into a business and started something where there's not as much radio swap outs. But where do you see the future next 5-10 years?
Well, I see that there's always going to be an evolution in the automotive industry. And, when I was, let's say, I shouldn't say younger, but I would say in the 70s or 80s, I even got sold on the fact that, well, there's not going to be any aftermarket soon because the new cars are coming out with all the stuff, right? But then when you really start getting, really start looking at it and dialing it in, the new cars, there's a small smidgen of adding into what's on the road. So, and every time they come up with a new technology, there's 10-year-old cars that want that technology to some degree. So you're going to have to always look how many aftermarket manufacturers there are. They're going to just go out of business. Yeah, maybe segments are going to change, but it's always going to be reinventing to the cars that are already made to add on some of these things onto the car. So, but with repair, I was thinking there was going to be, repair is always going to be here. It's never going to change. Aftermarket accessories are going to fade out. So I started to think that way, like everybody did. But then I started to see that Meineke came from mufflers, and then I helped expand them to all these other repair maintenance services. Those maintenance services started to slow down and get less profitable. More cost, higher cost of products. They, brakes are lasting longer. Things come with lifetime warranties, and so I saw that that's all drained. So now we're shifting from repair to maintenance. And maintenance is good because you got to change the oil. You got to change. Now you got synthetics coming out, and they're lasting longer. Oh, okay. Well, now that maintenance is slowing down, it's less profitable because it's going to the dealer. They're doing packages. Okay, we could do tires. Well, tires, you don't really make a lot of money in tires. Tires is like the lowest amount of profit you're going to make, and you got big fat inventory. So like, I don't really love that. So where is this going? It's not really going in a higher profit. It's going to lower profit. So when I was doing 800,000 in the store, I would make $200,000, $300,000 in profit. Then as it migrated, as the time went on, and you're selling more maintenance and more tires, I'd have to make $100 million too, just to make the same profit. And I saw that happening. And my last store I opened up in 2001 was an 18-bay store, and my exhaust went down to almost nothing, not even 10% of my business. It was everything else. And as the tires started migrating, it just got less fun. And I also realized that I didn't really like working around. I didn't like my employees that came into me as a tire changer making $10 an hour. I just felt it. I don't really want to be that guy. So I trained them how do you do this other stuff. But you always had to have the low end guys, and I didn't like seeing it. And I just felt bad about, not getting these people to grow. And I saw the industry changing. And that's when I said, you know what? I might have made a mistake. I was thinking that the aftermarket was going to die and repair would go on. And I think it's different. I think it's time. I think the aftermarket, people always want something sexy and new and nice. They want to have, something that's different, something style their ride, and I basically, SEMA had something called, restyling. And I'm like, well, it's not really restyling. Do you go to the hair salon and say, I'm going to get my hair restyled? No, you're going to get styled. So I came up with Tint World Automotive Styling Center, because we're going to style your ride, just like your podcast says. And so I lived it, I breathed it, and I trademarked the name. And so, yeah, tint is really good, and it's fun, and it's profitable, but it's a little bit seasonal, not completely, but it does slow down. And I wanted to add all these other things that I add into automotive to subsidize it. And there was really no other brand out there that was franchising in the aftermarket. They had great mom and pop stores and bad mom and pop stores. And all of them did one or two segments of a wheel shop, a stereo shop, a tint shop. There's all different, a detail shop. There's nobody that's doing, like, where do you go to your salon? I want to get it all. Well, Tintworld Automotive Styling Center, we can get these categories and do them all. And really start, whether it's leather interiors or whatever it is, you can come to us and we're going to have that segment for you. And in different parts of the US and Canada, different things are going to be more popular. So we started to really do that. I really wanted to build that full service aftermarket, aftercare system. And so that's what I really focused on. It's a mission. I wanted to do it. Nobody ever done it. And I came down here at 21. I wish they had it because I was going to do it. But it's a good thing they didn't have it, because it gave me the chance to build it myself.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Charles, just for time, we might end up having to do a part 2 at some point. This has been very interesting. What an awesome story you have, and really good background. I love all of the insights and the wisdom you added. We probably could talk for several hours and compare all these different ideas. And but for today, if you could, maybe just to wrap up, let me know 2 things, like, how can we help you? What are you looking for, maybe in a good franchisee? And then how do people get a hold of you if they're interested? What websites do you want them to go to, and that kind of thing?
Well, I mean, listen, there's a couple areas. Number one, if somebody's interested in franchising, I don't really I don't consider myself a salesman. I just an information giver. If somebody really wants a business, maybe just want to know about franchising and they like something different, I don't know, but I don't mind talking to people about franchising and how it works. But if they are interested in Tint World, I'm loving the fact that if they're capable and they want to do that, it's a fun business. It's a sexy business. I go into every day if you like it and you want to do something that you love, but you also have to make sure whatever it is that you do, you don't just love it. You want to be good at it. Something that you could be good at so you could be successful and enjoy your work every day. So that's about franchising. I love helping people with that. I work with all manufacturers, distributors. I work with regular people. I have kids coming in at 21 years old opening stores. I have people coming in at 61 opening stores. It doesn't really matter. People have a lifelong dream, whatever it is, they can do it. I have a system and a blueprint that'll let them grow. But it's not just going to come in and turn a key and you're not going to do anything. You're going to go and work it just like any other business. So about franchising, I'm passionate about. As far as, customers, if we have I don't think of it as like a custom car shop. I think about whether it's the 16-year-old girl gets her first car and she wants her windows tinted or cleaned, or whether it's, the super dad that's got like, the Ferrari or the Mercedes or or the Porsche. They want to come get their paint protection film so they can keep that car like brand new. We do all those things, and we have a welcoming facility. It's a retail environment. You come in, we have a showroom next, second to none. It's like, I kind of compare it to like the iPhone store for car accessories. And we're not just parts accessories, like we do install everything we do. So we're a service, facility. And it's all done really nice and clever where they can feel comfortable. And so that's how our retail customers, if they're interested. But where do you get me? If you want to contact Tint World as a customer, go to tintworld.com. You can find over 150 locations nationwide. We have stores in Canada. We have stores in Dubai. We have stores in Saudi Arabia. And we're getting ready to open up a master license in Brazil and some other countries. We also, and then if you're a business owner and if you go to tintworld.com, there's a button on there where you can get franchise information and go to a franchise site, learn about some of the things that we do, download a franchise kit. There's no obligation. Nobody's going to push you. If you want information, we talk. If you don't want to look, if you want to look around, you do it. We're very, we're just regular people. And if you want to get me and you want to connect me, if you're really big on LinkedIn, I have a big following on LinkedIn. I'm connected with everybody. You guys, I like posting things about my franchisees and about things that I do. And I'm not like a typical CEO. I'm just a car guy that loves to do nice things and show off cool things. We're building our new corporate center that's going to be opening up. It's going to have a cars cafe in it with all kinds of really cool things. I'm putting about $8 million into this building. On the first floor, it's a big custom car shop. And on the second floor, it's going to have our corporate headquarters. So I really want to have fun with whatever I do. And I've lived a strong life to be able to build myself to do that. So that's how you get a hold of me if you want.
That's awesome. Josh, any last questions or comments?
Thank you very much, Charles. Thank you for, just helping us in the industry too, being a leader in our industry. I think there's definitely some things that people can learn from. I love how you're open book and you're willing to help people. That definitely comes across. You did in your Meineke days and stuff like that. But we are just a small industry, and we got to help each other. And we never want the right to modify cars to go away. So we kind of are in this together. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. And I appreciate that. I'm happy to do it. And I do what I love.
And there you have it, another high-octane episode of the Ride and Style podcast, revved up and ready to go. Your hosts, Jesse Stoddard and Josh Poulson, shifted your automotive game into overdrive. If you're hungry for more insights, trends, and game-changing interviews from the automotive restyling universe, don't forget to hit subscribe and leave a glowing review. We'd also love for you to share this podcast with your gearheads, installers, and auto lovers network. Because remember, knowledge is power, but shared knowledge turbocharges the whole industry. For more expert resources to supercharge your business, cruise on over to autostylemarketing.com, your one-stop shop for everything automotive marketing. Until next time, keep those wheels spinning and your passion ignited. Thank you for riding in style with us. See you on the next lap.